Okay. It's sad this week. I'm sorry. I'm not myself this week. Um, I can't show him, but my baby's right here. He's he had cat. Okay, to specify cat. Um, he had seizures the other day, really bad, and so we took him to the vet, and they put him on phenobarbital, I think it is. So he's. They say it takes a month or so to get the meds under control and his body get used to the meds. Um, so he he's having a little convulsion, just a little. So if I could get your like and subscribes, I'd appreciate it. This is the D. Louise Book Series channel, and I'm Christina, Kristina. And I talk books, and I talk Star Trek Next Generation. I am a series person. I like series. I like to binge watch series. I like to binge read series books. That's what I do. So we have finally entered season 4 of Star Trek Next Generation. We are Best of Both Worlds Part 2 today. It's Friday, so it's Star Trek Day. 178 family next week. Oh, look at this. They're not in order. So, I don't know. What should I do? Because it's 175, 178, 177, 16. So maybe we should do 75, 76, 77, 78. They're not in order. Does anybody know why? I just noticed that. And you know, the screen's different for Best of Both Worlds, too. Hold on a sec. The screen is different. Sorry. So, a lot of this is diff. Well, not diff, but it's so primitive to what we were used to in the previous episodes. I should say this is Best of Both Worlds Part 2, Season 4, Disc 1, Episode 175. We open up where we left off, and Riker giving the open to fire, and nothing happens to the Borg cube. And their core is going to overheat, so Riker orders them to stop. And he says the Borg could not have adapted that fast, which means they learned the information from Picard. Then Picard says the knowledge and experience of the human Picard is now part of us. It has prepared us for all possible courses of actions. Your resistance is hopeless. Excuse me, it's futile. I'm used to my Borg Voyager terminology. I'm telling you, and I'm going to ask you. I asked you before, but I'm going to ask you again. If instead of Shelby and Hansen, if you had time traveling Captain Catherine Janeway and Seven of Nine here instead, How much more advanced would the Enterprise have been? Would they have been better advantaged? It's something to think about. If there's a fan fiction writer out there who can rewrite the episode and instead put Catherine Janeway in it and Seven of Nine time traveling back from the future, how much better would the Enterprise have fared? Would Captain Picard have still been captured? Yes. Are you okay? He gets stiff. Are you okay? Are you there? Yeah, he's he's sort of there. Yeah, his eyes are moving. Okay. And he's breathing. Are you okay? So, alright, just a sec. So then after we come back from opening credits, Riker's doing a voiceover. Actually, he's informing Admiral Hansen. And he's meeting he has Shelby, Crusher, Worf, Troy, Geordi, and Riker. Riker's given the overview. The Borg ship has resumed its course towards Earth. We are unable to pursue pending repairs to the Enterprise. Riker is saying, as we anticipated, the blast burned out our main navigational deflector. We also have damage to our shields and our reactor core. Geordi says we should be back up in 8 to 12 hours, Admiral. They are briefing Admiral Hansen here. Admiral Hansen says we will miss you at the party. Riker says the Enterprise will be there, maybe a little late, but we will be there, sir. Hansen says your engagements have given us valuable time. We have mobilized a fleet of 40 starships at Wolf 359. And if you have watched any of Picard's season 3, you will hear a survivor of 359 yell and scream at Picard and Riker as it was their fault, as it was Locutus's fault that it happened. And that would be Captain Lian Shaw, the captain of the Titan, at the beginning of Star Trek Picard Season 3. Hansen continues, and that is just for starters. The Klingons are singing in warships how we even have thought of opening communications with the Romulans. What about Vulcans? Or are they too peaceful? And there's a whole bunch of other species. Well, I wouldn't do the Ferengis aren't too much into war. Shelby says you realize, Admiral, that with the assistance of the Captain Picard, the Borg will be ready for your defenses. Hansen says, a lieutenant, a few years ago, I watched a freshman cadet pass 4 upperclassmen on the hill of a 40-kilometer run at Daniela 2. The damnedest thing I ever saw. The only freshman to ever win the Academy Marathon. I made it my business to get to know that young fellow, and I got to know him very well. I will tell you something. I never met anyone with more drive, more determination, or more courage than Jean-Luc Picard. There is no way in hell that he would assist the Borg. I want that clear. Shelby says, of course, Admiral. But that's not the point. They did it into his brain, so he didn't have a choice. They just took it. Hansen says he's a casualty of war. Dr. Crusher says, then we have abandoned all hope of recovering him. Hansen says in less than 24 hours, this armada is going to hit that Borg vessel with everything we can muster. Either they survive or we do. And as for Picard, a great man has been lost. Your captain, my friend Commander Riker, I hereby promote you to the Field Commission of Captain. The Enterprise is your ship now. Congratulations. I wish the circumstances were different. Riker says likewise. Good luck, Admiral. Okay, the next scene, we are on the Borg ship. And I still can't get... Look how clean it is. Look how shiny it is. There's no wires hanging anywhere. It's so clean. That's not the Borg ship from 7 of 9. It's not. It's too clean. I did all this stuff to him. All you sci-fi people. Where's the blood and gore? They put stuff in his brains. How come he's not got blood everywhere? Oh, good God. Come on, put your eyes back in your head. Are you okay? You're breathing. Okay. They said it was going to be dang. They said he won't remember. Yeah, so he's got his fingers bent. Because when they do the close-up, you can see that his fingers are bent. But it's just so shiny. What's up with that? They scan his brain. They put the thing on his arm. He's got the laser thingy. He cries. He's got a tear. So back on the Enterprise, Riker was talking to Worf. He says that Wesley Crusher said we might design a chip that would automatically retune the phasers to a random setting after each discharge. Worf said that would be a great advantage. Riker says we should also see if there is some way to neutralize their force fields. We've got to let them know that we can adapt to Mr. Worf. We are no longer just fighting the Borg, we are fighting the life experience they have stolen from Captain Picard. Now how the hell do we defeat an enemy that knows us better than we know ourselves? Worf says the Borg have neither honor nor courage. That is our greatest advantage. Riker says, I hope so. The next scene is in engineering, and Shelby says, our accelerator coils are responding normally. Geordi says, excellent, forward shields at 58%. Aft shield sensors must be down. Shelby checks on sensors and say they are fine. No, aft shields have completely failed. Damn it, auxiliary generators are out again. Geordi sees Riker and Worf and says, just the man I need. Referring to Worf. I thought it was Riker when he first said it, but it was Worf. We are having some problems with the aft shields. The generators are going on and offline. I could really use your help, Worf. Riker says, how soon do we get underway, Geordi? Geordi says, a couple of hours. Commander Shelby can fill you in. Okay, so Shelby comes in and says, the main navigational deflector is functioning again. Shelburne and Barclay are running through the final testing sequence now. Is Barclay still with them? That was my question. You don't see him. I thought he left. Or at least gave up the holodeck situation. Riker asks about the warp reactor core. Shelby says reconstruction is proceeding normally. It's a slow work. We can nail down the shield generator problem. I agree with LaForge. We should be back at operating capacity in 2 to 3 hours. Riker says good. Hansen says if there's anything else, Riker says you did a good job on the Borg ship. Hansen says I didn't get Picard. Riker says you stopped them. You gave us our shot. Hansen starts. Riker interrupts. Commander, we don't have to like each other to work well together. As a matter of fact, I'd like you to continue to keep me on my toes. Shelby says some might define that as the role of a first officer. Riker smiles. Damn, you are ambitious, aren't you, Shelby? Shelby says, Captain Riker, based on our past relationship, there's no reason for me to expect to become your first officer, except that you need me. I know how to get things done, and I have expertise in the Borg. Again, I would say this again. This is definitely, absolutely, 100% spot for Catherine Janeway, and 7 of 9. This is the spot. Travel back in time for their Borg experience. Riker says, you have a lot to learn, Commander. Shelby says, yes, sir. Riker says, almost as much as I had to learn when I came on board as Captain Picard's first officer. A fact he reminded me of when I commented on what a pain in the neck you are. Shelby says, yes, sir. Data interrupts and says a message from Starfleet. He tells Data to go ahead. Data says Starfleet reports it has engaged the Borg at Wolf 5359. Next scene is on the bridge. Data says Admiral Hansen on subspace. Captain Hansen says the fight does not go well, Enterprise. We are attempting to withdraw and regroup. Rendezvous with the fleet. And the communication is lost. Next is in the boardroom. Riker's doing an overview. Repairs are complete, and the Enterprise is warping to rendezvous with Starfleet at Wolf 359. Communications from the site of battle have been cut off, possibly due to Borg interference. And then he goes to each officer. Lieutenant Worf, everyone in this room shares my respect for your service to the ship, but right now I need your experience at tactical. Commander Data, I realize your very nature omits ambition. Nevertheless, I want you to know I seriously considered you as first officer. Data says thank you. Riker says, but this is not the time for change. I need all of you where you are, where Captain Picard always relied on you. I have been reluctantly forced to conclude that Commander Shelby, our expert on the Borg, is an ideal choice at this time for our first officer. Based on our latest communication, we can assume that the Borg survived the fleet attack. Your thoughts on our next encounter? Shelby says, what about the heavy gravitation beam we were talking about? Geordi says, I have gone over it 4 times. The local field distortion just wouldn't be strong enough to incapacitate them. Data says, Dr. Crusher and I have been working on an interesting premise. Dr. Crusher says, with our recent experience in nanotechnology, we might be able to introduce a destructive breed of nanites into the Borg. Shelby says, nanites? Excuse me, Captain Catherine Janeway. She does this successfully. And the doctor uses 7 of 9's nanites for a whole bunch of different reasons, medical reasons. And Stargate Atlantis uses the nanites to heal Dr. Weir. So we've got some nanites in our future. Riker asks how long would it take to execute that. Dr. Crusher says that's the problem, 2 to 3 weeks. Joy says in 2 to 3 weeks, nanites might be all that's left of the Federation. Worf says we have a new phaser adapters. Geordi says maybe in concert with the photon torpedoes, we can slow them down. Riker says, I'm sure Captain Picard would have something meaningful and inspirational to say right now. To tell the truth, I wish he was here because I could like to hear it too. I know this is difficult transition has been for all of you. I can take over for him, but I could never replace a Captain Picard, nor would I try. Whatever the outcome, I'm sure our efforts in the coming battle will justify his face in all of us. Dismissed. The next scene is in the captain's office here, and he walks in and goes, "What would you do?" Well, see, you know what the problem is here is that because the Borg have assimilated Captain Picard, they know everything he would do. So you have to do things that he doesn't do, or does not do, or would not do. That's the only way to do it. Because Picard knows all Starfleet Enterprise stuff. So you have to do stuff that Picard would not do. And then Guinan walks in and asks if she could speak with him, and Riker interrupts, but Guinan says, "You know, Picard and I used to talk every now and then when one of us needed to," and sits in the captain's chair. "I guess I'm just used to having the captain's ear." Riker asks, "What's on your mind?" Guinan says, "I heard a lot of people talking down in 10 forward. They expect to be dead in the next day or so. They trust you, they like you, but they don't believe anyone can save them." Riker says, "I'm not sure anyone can." Guinan says, "When a man is convinced he's going to die tomorrow, he will probably find a way to make it happen. The only one who can turn this around is you." Riker says, "I will do the best I can." Guinan says, "You are going to have to do something you don't want to do. You are going to have to let go of Picard." Riker says, "Maybe you haven't heard. I tried to kill him yesterday." Guinan says, "You tried to kill whatever that is on the Borg ship, not Picard." Guinan says, "Picard is still here with us in this room. If he had died, it would be easier, but he didn't. They took him from us a piece at a time." "Did he ever tell you why we were close?" Riker says, "No." "I will tell you that they meet in the 1800s in Samuel Clemens." That was a nice episode. I'm looking forward to that one. Riker says, "No." Guinan says, "Oh, then let me just say our relationship is beyond friend family. I will let him go, and you must do the same. There can only be one captain." Riker says, "It's not that simple. This was his crew. He wrote the book on the ship." Guinan says, "If the Borg know everything he knows, it's time to throw away that book." "That's what I said." "You must let him go, Riker. It's the only way to beat him, the only way to save him. That is your chair, Captain." She leaves. He goes and sits down in the chair. Crusher announces, "We are now approaching the Wolf system, Captain." I tried to hold my baby. It didn't work out well. His eyes are rolling all over the place. His tongue's hanging out of his mouth. He's breathing a little on the quick side. But he's still here. Talk about stressful. So anyways, he's my emotional support cat. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I need emotional support cat for my emotional support cat. You want to be my emotional support cat? Smoke. Come here, Smoke. I dare you to be on camera. Nope. She's going to hide right behind the camera. Come on, Smoke. Smoke. Come here, Smoke. Smoke. Come here. Come here. Smoke. Fine, fine, fine. So Riker goes to the bridge and says, "Bring us to impulse power. Take us to the battle coordinates, Mr. Crusher. Yellow alert." Wolf says sensors are picking up several vessels, Captain. Riker says the fleet Data says no active subspace fields. Negligible power readings. Riker says life signs. Data says negative. Worf says visual contact, and they put it on screen. It's a visual cemetery of ships. Hansen names the ships the Tolstoy, the Kyushu, and the Melbourne. They're still on the bridge. Worf says sensors are picking up unusual strong eddy currents bearing 200 Mark 211. Riker says data says it could indicate the course of the Borg ship, sir. Riker says ensign Crusher set course that follow those coordinates. Riker says current shall be prepared to initiate your plan to separate the saucer section when we find the Borg. Shelby says, I must remind you that Captain Picard was briefed on that plan. The Borg will prepare for it. Riker says, I'm aware of that, Commander. In fact, I'm counting on it. Shelby says, Crusher, Sertano, Gleason, report to the battle bridge. Riker says, Mr. Data, Mr. Worf, I have a special mission for you. Are Voyager's Borg like this, empty in the back? I could have sworn they all had leather on the back. He's lacking clothing on the back. And if you stay tuned later, I'll tell you what my little brother said. It's cute. You have to stay tuned. Riker says, Mr. Data, Mr. Worf, I have a special mission for you. The next scene is on the Borg cube. Riker says, Locutus of Borg, this is Captain William T. Riker. William T. Kirk? Tiberius Kirk. Wasn't it William Tiberius? I forget. Of the USS Enterprise. Picard says, you may speak. Riker says, we wish to end the hostilities. Picard says, you must unconditionally surrender. Riker says, we are prepared to meet to discuss your terms. Picard said, is that unlikely you are prepared to discuss terms? It is more likely that this is an attempted deception. Riker says, come now, Locutus. If because knowledge and experience is part of you, then you know that I have never lied to him. You should also implicitly trust me. Is that not so? Picard implicitly trusts you. Riker says, then trust me now. Me to discuss your terms. Picard says, discuss terms is irrelevant. There are no terms. You will disarm all your weapons and escort us to Sector 001, where we will begin assimilating your culture. And Riker cuts off. You know, this is not my Voyager Borg. Riker cuts off the sound. And Mr. Gleason, can you pinpoint the source of the Borg transition? Gleason says, I can put you in 30 meters of it, sir. Riker says, context O'Brien. O'Brien says the Borgs have adapted the electromagnetic field to prevent main transporter function, sir. Riker says, as expected. Riker says, Mr. Data, Mr. Wolf, proceed as we discussed. O'Brien says, aye, Captain. Oh, sorry. Oops, I made a mistake. I hope it's okay. Data and Worf use the mobile emitters that look like what the Doctor had on Star Trek Voyager. Riker says, open channel. Riker says we should like time to prepare our people for assimilation. Picard says preparation is irrelevant. Your people will be assimilated as easily as Picard has been. Your attempt at delay will not be successful, number one. We will proceed on Earth, and if you attempt to intervene us, we will destroy you. Riker says, then take your best shot, Locutus, because we are about to intervene. Riker cuts off. Reset subspace communication. Scramble code Riker 1. Scramble code Riker 2. Acknowledge. Shelby report. Shelby says, ready for separation. Riker says, make it so. Shelby says, auto separation sequence initiated. Shelby says, auto separation sequence initiated. The next scene is the saucer separating from the main section of the Enterprise. Then we see Geordi in engineering saying separation is complete. He just stands there and watches. That must really hurt that he has no control, that he just stands there and watches. Mr. Gleason says source of philosophy 100 meters per second and increasing, sir. Riker says open fire all weapons. Shelby says fire. Mr. Crusher says Borg tractor beam attempting to lock on, sir. Riker says evasive maneuvers pattern Alpha. Mr. Crusher says Riker Alpha confirmed. Mr. Crusher says they're ignoring the saucer section completely. Riker says just as you should, Captain. Ensign evasive pattern Riker Beta. Mr. Crusher says Riker Beta confirmed. Riker says proceed to phase 2, Commander Shelby. Shelby says acknowledged. Shelby says fire antimatter spread. And we see Data and Worf on the shuttle. Data says departing Enterprise in 3 seconds. Wesley says the Borg tractor beam has moved toward the antimatter spread. They might be picking up on the engine ionization from the shuttle. Riker says, Mr. Data, cut your engines. Take her in unpowered. Worf says the shuttle has penetrated the Borg electromagnetic field. Riker says understood. Data says shuttle escape transporters should provide enough power to beam us onto the Borg ship from here, sir. Riker says proceed. Worf and Data beam on the Borg ship. They encounter the Borg. They capture the captain and transport back to the shuttle and then beam to Enterprise. Now I want to know I finally got some emotional support here. Oh, my puppy. So, they get the captain back. Why didn't they leave? Why didn't the saucer section leave? Why didn't they get out of town? Why did they stay? Yes, go on. Shelby says, Captain, we have sustained damage to the impulse drive. The saucer section is disabled. Mr. Gleason says, reading subspace field fluctuations from the Borg ship. Looks like they are getting ready to increase power. Riker says, stand by, Mr. LaForge. Wesley says the saucer section is a sitting duck. Well, I guess that explains why they didn't leave. So, Riker says, prepare to fire. Wesley says the Borg ship is moving away. It's resuming course towards Earth. Riker says rendezvous with the saucer section. Lay in a pursuit. Scene is in sick bay. Dr. Crusher is saying there is extensive filtration of the microcircuit fibers in the surrounding tissue. His DNA is being rewritten. Riker says, can you revive him? Dr. Crusher says, I'd like more time to study the structural changes in the motor pathways. Riker says, we don't have more time, Doctor. Once he was wired into the Borg, they knew everything that he knew. I just hope it goes both ways. If we are lucky, he had access to everything we need to know about them, especially their vulnerabilities. Dr. Crusher wakes him up. Dr. Crusher says, Jean-Luc, it's Beverly. Can you hear me? I don't know what my cat is doing, but she's getting in a lot of trouble, and I can't find her. Dr. Crusher wakes him up. Dr. Crusher says, Jean-Luc, it's Beverly. Can you hear me? Picard answers her like a Borg with her designation. Picard says, a futile maneuver, incorrect strategy number 1, to risk your crew and ship to retrieve only one man. Picard would never have approved. You underestimate us if you believe this abduction is any concern. There's no need for apprehension. I intend no harm. I will continue aboard the ship to speak for the Borg while they continue without further diversion to Sector 001, where they will force your unconditional surrender. Somebody's not happy with me. Guess who I found? She's having a rough day. She's not She's afraid of what is happening to her brother. She's afraid, and he's making her nervous and anxious. And I'm trying to tell her she is loved. You are loved. But she is not happy. She is not happy at all. Yeah. How about if you look this way? How's that? Is that better? Go on. All right. Data says using multi-model reflection sorting, I have been able to detect a complex series of sub-signals between Locutus and the Borg ship. Dr. Crusher says that's how they are controlling him. Data says it's not just a matter of control, Doctor. The signals are interactive across the subspace domain, similar to that of a transporter beam. I would hypothesize that these frequencies form the basis of the Borg collective consciousness. Riker says, can we block them? Data says possibly, but as you recall, on several occasions we have witnessed the Borg removing key circuits from injured comrades, no doubt separating them from the group consciousness. Riker says the injured Borg immediately self-destructed. Data says that's correct, sir. Dr. Crusher says cutting the link to Locutus may be fatal to the captain. Riker says we have to find a way to reach him. We must know what he knows. Dr. Crusher says without these interactive signals, it would only be a matter of microsurgery. I could do it, but as long as these Borg implants are functioning, there's no way I can separate the man from the machine. Data says then perhaps there is a way I can access the machine, Doctor. Now, they let him just walk around. He's Borg, and they're just letting him walk around. They don't have him caged someplace. Picard identifies Worf, Klingon species, a warrior race. You two will be assimilated. Worf says the Klingon Empire will never yield. Picard says, why do you resist? We only wish to raise the quality of life for all species. Worf says, I like my species the way it is. This is so not Borg speech that I am used to. I am used to the speech on Voyager. Picard says, narrow vision. You will become one with the Borg. You all will become one with the Borg. He goes to Data, the android primitive artificial organism. You will be obsolete in the new order. Then they put Picard to sleep, and Riker says, take him to the lab, Data. Shelby contacts the lab and tells Riker that the Borg have entered Sector 001. Shelby says the Borg have dropped out of warp. The Jupiter Outpost 92 reports visual contact at 1200 hours 13 minutes. Riker asks about planetary defense. Shelby says no reports on effectiveness, but I really can't believe that against the Borg. Nice view of Saturn. Riker says, Ensign Crusher, at their current speed, when will the Borg reach Earth? Wesley says 27 minutes. Riker says the soonest we could intercept. Crusher says 42 minutes. Riker contacts Data. What's your status? Data says the initial cybernetic connection into Captain Picard's neural net pathways has been established. Mr. Bryan is ready to process the Borg signal through the transport pattern buffer. Data says proceeding immediately. Okay, so Dr. Crusher connects Picard and Data. Data says, Dr. Crusher, I suggest you observe Captain Picard's life signs while at each stage. Chief O'Brien, monitor my positronic matrix. Counselor, hopefully you'll be able to determine whether I am reaching Captain Picard. O'Brien asks, at what point should I shut it down if there's a problem? But Data says, I don't know. I've never done this before. Data initiating first neural link. Dr. Crusher says vital signs are stable. O'Brien says positronic activity unchanged. Data confirms neural connections. I cannot report any significant access to the Borg consciousness. Back on the bridge, Worf says it's confirmed that the Borg have broke through the Mars defense perimeter. Wesley says Enterprise now approaching Terran system. Riker tells him to slow to impulse. Riker says time to intercept. Wesley says 23 minutes. Back in the lab, Data says second neural connection is confirmed. Data says I still cannot report any significant access. Data says processing the final link. Dr. Crusher says significant increase in premotor hypothesis activity. O'Brien reports the data submicro matrix actively is increasing exponentially. Data reports neutral connections complete. I have access to the Borg subspace signals. Data repeats processing. Fascinating. The Borg group consciousness is divided into subcommands necessary to carry out all functions, defense, communication, navigation. They are all controlled by a root command implanted into each. Picard wakes up and starts doing stuff. Data breaks arm after he tosses a crew member. Now, I want to tell you a little secret. When my little brother came in here and saw me watching, he said I wasn't allowed to watch it because Captain Picard was naked and he turned the TV off on me. Seriously, he said, you're not allowed to watch this, he's naked. And he turned the TV off. Dr. Crusher says I'm picking up increased neural activity in Captain Picard, localized in the prefrontal and parietal lobes. O'Brien says the Borg might try to terminate the link with him. Data checks it out and says the subspace signal configuration is unchanged. What is causing the increased neural activity is unclear. Troy said, no, it's him, it's Picard. She contacts the bridge and says the Data has made first contact with Captain Picard. Riker asks if Data can communicate with him. Data says, I have been unable to create a neural path around the Borg implants. It is Captain Picard himself who has somehow managed to initiate contact. Yeah, Christmas lights in Data's head. So Data breaks his hand. Worf reports the Borg have hailed their approach to Earth. Riker says they are worried because we have access to Picard. He tells Data he has 2 minutes to figure out what we can do with it. Data says it's clear the Borg are unwilling or unable to terminate their subspace links. Dr. Crusher says that might be their Achilles heel, their interdependency. Riker says what she means. Dr. Crusher says it's part of their collective conscience. Now cutting him off would be like asking one of us to disconnect an arm or a foot. We can't do it. Shelby says they operate as a single mind. Riker says one of them jumps off a cliff, they all jump off. Data says it's possible to plant a command into the Borg collective consciousness. Data responds that it's conceivable, sir, but will require altering the pathway from the root command to affect all irritated branch points. Riker tells him to make every effort. Data asks what idea should he attempt to plant. Riker says something straightforward like disarm your weapon systems. Worf says visual contact with the Borg. Worf says sensors reading increased generation from the Borg. Riker says red alert, load all torpedo bays, ready phasers, and ask status of Borg weapons. Worf says the weapon systems are full charge. Data says attempting to reroute commands past Captain defense systems and protected by access barriers. Worf says Borg attempting to lock on tractor beam. Riker says to rotate shield frequencies. Ask Data for report. Data says I'm unable to penetrate defense systems command structure. Shelby tried the power system if you can get them to power down. Data acknowledges and attempts a new power sub-command path. Geordi said shields have failed. They have locked on and they are pulling us in. Riker says fire all weapons. Data says I cannot penetrate Borg power sub-command structure. All critical commands are protected. Riker says Mr. Crusher ready a collision course with the Borg ship. Crusher looks at him like, huh? Riker says you heard me, a collision course. Riker tells Geordi to prepare for warp. Picard says sleep. Dr. Crusher says he's regaining consciousness. Picard says sleep. Troy says it's the Captain Card speaking, not Lotus. Dr. Crusher says he's exhausted. Data says yes, but I may make a supposition. I do not believe his message was intended to express fatigue, but to suggest a course of action. Worf says Borg cutting beam activated. Riker starts to tell Wesley when Data interrupts. He says he is attempting to penetrate the Borg regenerative subcommand path. It's a low priority system and may be accessible. Everything stops. Riker asks what happened. Data says he successfully planted a command into the Borg collectiveness, misdirected them to believe it was time to regenerate. In effect, I put them all to sleep. Riker says to sleep. Data says yes. Riker asks static of Borg power drive. Worf says minimal power. Electromagnetic field non-existent. Riker tells Shelby to take an away team and confirm the Borg are asleep. Now, I'm going to tell you that what would have worked, the Asgard in Stargate SG-1, they asked SG-1 to come to the replicators and they used bullets. Can you imagine if they had bullets instead of phasers? They could just shoot them in the brain, they'd be dead. But this works, they put them all to sleep and they self-destruct. But they go check out that they're dead. You know, they could have planted some C4, like O'Neill would have done in this situation, or bullets. But you know, some little brother turned my TV off. Well, he stopped. Well, I thought he stopped. I was going to say he stopped convulsing. And then he convulsed. This is going to be a stressful month. I need to get used to this. Okay, so they go over. Shelby says there are indications here that the entire power net's about to feed back on itself. I'd say we are looking at a self-destruct sequence activated by the Borg malfunction. Do you want us to attempt to disarm it? Riker says stand by. Dr. Crusher says there's no way to know what the destruction of the Borg ship will do to him. Data says we should also consider the advantage of further examination of the Borg and their vessel, sir. Riker says I don't think so. He tells Data to separate himself from the Captain Picard. Away team, get yourself home. Mr. Crusher, upon their return, move us to a safe position. Alright. Mr. Crusher, upon their return, move us to a safe distance. Borg ship explodes. Dr. Crusher says life signs are stable and the DNA around the microcircuit fiber implants is returning to normal. Troy asks, how do you feel? Picard says almost human with a bit of a slight headache. Dr. Crusher says we'll get you to sickbay. We won't have any trouble removing those implants now. Riker says, how much do you remember? Picard says everything, including some brilliantly unorthodox strategy from a former first officer of mine. Now, his recovery was just a little quick for me. Shouldn't he be in sickbay for a few days and they automatically gave him command back? I mean, like that. I mean, there was no time span, maybe recover for a few weeks or something. He's been through a traumatic ordeal. He just automatically jumped back in the captain's seat, right? Riker is giving his report. Says the Earth Station McKinley has advised that they are ready to go ahead refitting the Enterprise. Picard says, and the estimate time for repairs. Riker says 5 or 6 weeks. Shelby walks in and requests permission to disembark. Picard grants permission. They pick a fine officer for the task force commander. Shelby says we will have the fleet back up in less than a year. I imagine you will have your choice of any Starfleet command, sir. Riker says, why is everybody so concerned about my career and my next job? With all due respect, Commander, my career plans are my own business and no one else's, but it's nice to know I'll have a few options. Shelby says, I hope I have the future of serving again with you, sir. The final scene in the episode, he's looking out the window at Earth. Preemptive information for Star Trek Picard Season 3. That's the only season that matters. The first 2 seasons of Picard just don't care. It's Season 3. That's it. That's all that matters is Season 3. So we have finished The Best of Both Worlds Part 2, Episode 175, first episode of Season 4. Okay, so somebody will have to let me know. Do we do 178 first, then 177, or go 176? Because these are not in order. So should we watch them in order? Well, somebody will have to let me know if we have to watch these in order. So that was the best of both worlds. I don't know. Will we do 178 next week? And the loud person, and then suddenly human. Let me know. And have a good one. And don't forget to like and subscribe to D. Louise Book Series channel. And I'm Christina. I need those likes, especially during my sick kitty time. Thank you. Have a good day.